You've probably seen the headlines by now. Elon Musk says Grok 5 will be the smartest AI in the world by a significant margin.
The final resting place of ancient Egyptian Queen Nefertiti could finally have been discovered, thanks to advances in modern technology.
For over a century, one face has fascinated millions from behind the glass of a Berlin museum. Calm, flawless, and perfectly symmetrical, it has become the most famous face of ancient Egypt. But in 2007, everything changed. Doctors placed the famous bust inside a hospital CT scanner, the same technology used to examine the human body. What appeared on the screen shocked researchers. Hidden beneath the flawless outer surface was a second face, carefully concealed more than 3,000 years ago. And the deeper scientists investigated, the stranger the mystery became. Before we reveal what they discovered, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more incredible mysteries, ancient secrets, and forgotten discoveries. To understand why this hidden face matters, we first need to understand the woman behind it. The sculpture is the famous bust of Nefertiti, queen of ancient Egypt and wife of Pharaoh Akhenaten, who ruled during the 14th century BC. Nefertiti wasn't simply a queen. She stood beside one of the most controversial rulers in Egyptian history. Akhenaten transformed Egypt by abandoning its traditional gods and declaring that the sun disk, Aten, should be worshipped as the nation's only deity. This wasn't a minor religious reform. He closed temples that had stood for centuries, moved Egypt's capital to a newly built city in the desert called Amarna, and completely changed the artistic style that had defined Egyptian civilization for generations. Throughout this revolution, Nefertiti remained at his side. Ancient reliefs even show her performing sacred ceremonies, normally reserved for the pharaoh himself, suggesting she held remarkable political and religious influence. Today, her bust is celebrated as one of the greatest masterpieces of the ancient world. Its graceful neck, elegant blue crown, sharp cheekbones, and mysterious smile make it seem almost impossibly perfect. As it turns out, that perfection may have been intentional. The story begins on December 6, 1912, when German archaeologist Ludwig Borchardt and his team were excavating the abandoned city of Amarna. Among the ruins, they uncovered the workshop of the royal sculptor Thutmose, identified by inscriptions bearing his name. Inside were unfinished statues, broken tools, plaster models, and sculptures in various stages of completion, the remains of a busy artist's studio frozen in time. Then, beneath layers of sand and debris, they uncovered the remarkable bust of Nefertiti. One detail makes this discovery especially important. The sculpture wasn't found inside a royal tomb or palace. It was discovered inside the sculptor's own workshop. That suggests it may never have reached its intended destination. Perhaps it was a royal portrait awaiting completion. Perhaps it served as a master model for apprentices. Or perhaps the artist was still perfecting it when history intervened. Whatever its original purpose, the bust appears to have remained inside the workshop until the city itself was abandoned. When Akhenaten died, his religious revolution collapsed with astonishing speed, and the once glorious city of Amarna was deserted, leaving one of history's most famous faces buried beneath the sands for more than 3,000 years. When the city of Amarna was abandoned, it happened so quickly that workshops were left exactly as they were. Artists dropped their tools, buildings slowly disappeared beneath the desert, and Nefertiti's famous bust remained hidden in darkness for nearly 3,300 years. The other discoveries inside Thutmose's workshop offer an important clue about how this remarkable sculpture may have been created. Archaeologists uncovered several plaster face molds, many of which appear to have been taken directly from real people. Unlike the perfectly idealized style common in Royal Egyptian art, these casts preserve natural human features, slight facial asymmetry, realistic skin texture, and subtle imperfections. That leads to an intriguing possibility. If Thutmose regularly based his sculptures on lifelike facial casts, could the concealed inner face of the Nefertiti bust represent something far more authentic? Could it actually preserve the closest likeness we have of the real queen? Even the man who discovered the sculpture struggled to describe what he had found. German archaeologist Ludwig Borchardt recorded in his diary that the bust's beauty was beyond words, writing that it simply had to be seen to be believed. But the discovery soon sparked a controversy that continues to this day. For decades, Egyptian officials have argued that Borchardt deliberately minimized the importance of the bust during the official division of archaeological finds between Germany and Egypt, a legal practice at the time. According to this claim, he described it merely as a painted plaster object, instead of emphasizing that it was an extraordinary limestone masterpiece. Critics believe that had Egyptian authorities realized its true significance, they never would have approved its removal from the country. Germany has consistently denied those accusations. Officials maintain that the artifact was obtained through the legal excavation procedures of the period, and that Egyptian representatives had every opportunity to inspect the discoveries before they were divided. More than a century later, the disagreement remains unresolved. The bust still resides in Berlin, while Egypt continues to request its return. This debate reaches far beyond Nefertiti alone. It reflects a broader international discussion over where priceless historical artifacts truly belong, a conversation that also includes famous treasures, housed in museums far from the countries where they were originally discovered. Supporters of keeping the bust in Berlin argue that it has been carefully preserved, extensively studied, and admired by millions of visitors over the past century. Others respond that conservation and popularity do not answer the larger ethical question of rightful ownership. It's a dispute with no simple solution. And that's one reason the story continues to return to headlines generation after generation. Yet the debate over ownership is only part of the mystery. The most astonishing discovery was still waiting to happen. Years before the famous 2007 examination, scientists had already attempted to see what lay beneath the sculpture's surface. In 1992, researchers performed an early CT scan that revealed the bust contained a far more complex internal structure than anyone expected. But the imaging technology available at the time lacked the resolution needed to explain exactly what was hidden inside. The secret would remain locked away for another 15 years. The first CT scan, performed in 1992, had one major limitation. It captured images only about every 5 millimeters. While that sounded impressively detailed at the time, the hidden features inside the bust were buried just 1 or 2 millimeters beneath the surface, far beyond what the technology could clearly reveal. Researchers knew something unusual was hidden inside. They simply couldn't tell whether it was an ordinary stone core or something much more remarkable. Everything changed in 2006. While adjusting the lighting around the famous display, Berlin Museum director Dietrich Wildung noticed faint wrinkles on Nefertiti's neck and subtle signs of aging near her eyes. Those tiny details inspired a new investigation. Soon afterward, Dr. Alexander Huppertz and his team at Berlin's Charité Hospital performed a high-resolution CT scan using a modern 64-slice spiral scanner, the same advanced technology doctors use to examine the brain, blood vessels, and internal organs. For the first time, scientists could explore the inside of the 3,000-year-old sculpture in extraordinary detail. As the digital images appeared layer by layer, the team realized they had uncovered something completely unexpected. To understand why, it helps to know how the bust was originally made. The sculptor Thutmose first carved a detailed limestone core that formed the basic shape of the head, face, and neck. He then covered it with carefully shaped layers of stucco, allowing him to refine individual features with much greater precision than stone alone would permit. This technique gave artists tremendous creative freedom. The stone established the structure, while the stucco allowed subtle adjustments, softening facial lines, sharpening features, and perfecting proportions without altering the underlying sculpture. But the scan revealed something astonishing. The limestone core wasn't a rough framework. It was already a beautifully finished portrait. The eyes, nose, lips, and facial contours had all been carved with exceptional care. Hidden beneath the famous outer surface was an entirely complete sculpture, and it wasn't identical. Those lines disappeared completely beneath the outer stucco layer. The limestone nose featured a slight bump along its bridge, a realistic human characteristic. On the finished bust, that bump had been carefully smoothed into a perfectly straight profile. Even the cheekbones had been subtly raised and reshaped to create a more idealized appearance. The CT scans also showed that the stucco wasn't spread evenly. Instead, its thickness varied across different parts of the face, revealing that the sculptor intentionally modified individual features rather than simply applying a uniform coating. Dr. Huppert summarized the discovery by explaining that the sculpture effectively contains two slightly different faces, offering researchers an unprecedented look at the artist's creative process more than 3 millennia ago. Most Egyptologists interpret these findings in a straightforward way. They believe Thutmose first carved a realistic likeness of Nefertiti before refining it with stucco, smoothing natural wrinkles, adjusting the nose, and enhancing other features to match the artistic ideals of the time. If that interpretation is correct, then the famous bust admired around the world isn't an exact portrait of the Queen. It's an idealized version of her. Yet that explanation raises another fascinating question. The Amarna period, during which Nefertiti lived between roughly 1353 and 1336 BC, is actually known for introducing greater realism into Egyptian art. Unlike the highly formal style of earlier dynasties, Amarna artists portrayed the royal family in surprisingly natural ways, embracing one another, interacting with their children, and expressing genuine emotion, which makes the decision to idealize Nefertiti's face all the more intriguing. During the Amarna period, artists began portraying people in ways that felt surprisingly natural. Children were sculpted with soft, youthful features instead of miniature adult bodies. Akhenaten himself was shown with an unusually long face, narrow frame, and distinctive proportions that historians still debate today. Some believe these features reflected religious symbolism, while others think they may have represented his real appearance. Whatever the reason, Amarna art moved toward realism rather than away from it. That's what makes Nefertiti's bust so fascinating. It seems to exist between two worlds. On one hand, it is one of the most lifelike sculptures ever created in ancient Egypt. On the other, its famous outer face is almost impossibly flawless, perfectly balanced, smooth, and idealized beyond ordinary human features. Yet the hidden limestone portrait beneath the surface tells a different story. Its gentle wrinkles, subtle asymmetry, and natural details feel much closer to the realistic style that defined the Amarna era. And that raises one of the biggest questions surrounding the sculpture. Why would an artist first create a detailed, realistic portrait only to cover it with a more perfect version? One explanation is simple. Perhaps this was nothing more than the normal artistic process, refining a portrait until it matched the royal beauty standards of the time. But some historians believe there may be more to it. Since the CT scan results were released, researchers have suggested that the hidden limestone face could represent Nefertiti's true appearance, while the outer layer was intentionally modified to make her look younger and more idealized. If that's correct, this bust may preserve one of history's earliest examples of carefully shaping a ruler's public image, long before photography, magazines, or social media ever existed. The sculpture's modern journey has been almost as remarkable as the mystery hidden inside it. After arriving in Berlin in 1913, the bust remained out of public view for several years before finally going on display in 1924. Its impact was immediate. Visitors were captivated, and newspapers praised it as one of the greatest artistic treasures ever recovered from ancient Egypt. Then came World War II. As bombing raids threatened German cities, priceless museum collections were moved into secure, underground shelters. Nefertiti's bust spent the war hidden deep inside a salt mine, protected from destruction. After the war, it became part of the Egyptian Museum in West Berlin, remaining there throughout the Cold War, while many related artifacts were separated on the eastern side of the divided city. Following Germany's reunification, the collections were gradually brought together once again. Today, the bust stands as the centerpiece of Berlin's Neues Museum, displayed in a gallery designed specifically around this single masterpiece. It has become one of Germany's most celebrated cultural treasures, yet Egypt has never stopped asking for its return. In 2003, Egyptologist Zahi Hawass formally requested that Germany repatriate the bust, arguing that its original removal from Egypt had not been handled fairly. Germany declined. The request was renewed in 2011, and once again, the answer was no. Today, hundreds of thousands of visitors admire Nefertiti's famous face each year. Few realize that beneath its flawless surface lies another portrait, a face that appears slightly older, less polished, and perhaps closer to the real woman who lived more than 3,300 years ago. Since the CT scan findings became public, scholars have continued debating what those two faces truly represent. Some believe the outer layer was deliberately created to present an ideal version of the queen, carefully crafted for public display. After all, royal portraits in ancient Egypt were never intended to function like modern photographs. Their purpose was to communicate authority, beauty, and divine power, not necessarily to record reality. Viewed that way, the famous bust becomes much more than a work of art. The hidden limestone portrait may represent the woman herself. The flawless outer face may represent the image her royal court wanted the world to remember. Not everyone accepts the more dramatic interpretation. Many researchers argue that the differences between the two faces, while fascinating, are simply too subtle to prove that the sculpture was deliberately altered for political image management. According to this view, the changes are better explained by the materials themselves. Working with limestone is very different from working with stucco. Stone naturally preserves tiny textures and imperfections, while stucco allows an artist to smooth surfaces, soften facial lines, and create more graceful transitions with far greater flexibility. From this perspective, the outer face wasn't designed as royal propaganda. It was simply the final stage of a master sculptor's work. Whichever explanation is correct, the discovery highlights a much larger mystery: How much do we truly know about Nefertiti herself? The honest answer is not very much. No personal diary has ever been found. No letters written in her own words have survived. Nothing tells us directly what she thought, how she lived, or what kind of person she really was. Nearly everything historians know comes from statues, temple reliefs, inscriptions, and official royal artwork. And among all those surviving images, none has shaped our view of Nefertiti more than this famous bust. For over a century, it has become the face the entire world associates with the Egyptian queen. But if the outer layer was intentionally refined, then the image that defined her legacy may actually be the one least faithful to her real appearance. The artistic style of the Amarna period makes the mystery even more intriguing. Many royal carvings from Akhenaten's reign portray members of the royal family with elongated skulls, slender necks, and unusually stylized facial features. Historians still debate whether these characteristics reflected real physical traits, religious symbolism, artistic convention, or a combination of all three. Yet the famous bust of Nefertiti stands apart. Its outer face lacks many of those exaggerated Amarna features. Instead, it presents a balanced, elegant appearance that feels surprisingly familiar, even by modern standards of beauty. Was that because the bust served a different purpose from temple reliefs? Or were the final stucco refinements intentionally designed to create a more universally appealing image? No one can answer that with certainty. And that uncertainty is exactly what has kept this discovery so captivating for more than 100 years. After decades of research, one remarkable contradiction remains. Scientists have examined this sculpture in extraordinary detail. They've scanned its hidden layers, analyzed its pigments, measured its internal structure, and documented features smaller than a millimeter. Yet despite all of that technology, one simple question still has no definitive answer. What did Nefertiti actually look like? The face recognized around the world isn't the first face the sculptor created, and the original portrait remained concealed beneath the surface for over 3,000 years. But perhaps there's another way to think about this mystery, one that moves beyond the debate over propaganda versus realism, and asks an even more intriguing question. Perhaps the two faces were never meant to compete. The hidden limestone portrait may have been the sculptor's foundation, while the outer stucco layer became the finished masterpiece. But thanks to modern CT scans, we now know this famous bust holds two different faces, and that the artist deliberately reshaped the final version. One thing, however, is certain. Even after 3,300 years, this sculpture continues to reveal new secrets. What do you think? Is the hidden face the real Nefertiti, or simply part of the sculptor's process? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this mystery, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Our next video uncovers another incredible ancient discovery you won't want to miss. MB.